So you want more accountability with your team. You want people who take ownership, follow through, and show up without being chased. But here's the question that nobody's really asking you. Are you doing that? Because here's the hard truth. You cannot pass on what you haven't built in yourself. And you can't demand ownership from people who are watching you avoid it. And you definitely cannot lead with emotional intelligence if you don't even know your own blind spots. 95% of people believe they are self-aware. According to Harvard Business Review, only 10 to 15% actually are. That means there's 80% chance that you're walking around with a gap between who you think you are as a leader and who your team actually experiences. And today I'm going to help you close that gap. Hi everyone, my name is Lena Nasserdeen. I am the CEO and the founder of Rise Up For You. And every single day, my team and I work with leaders all over the world, helping them build the skills that they truly need to build sustainable success, not only as an individual, but also as an organization. We work with everything from Fortune 5 companies to nonprofit organizations to government institutes, all the way down to the individual professional entrepreneur and business leader. And let me tell you, I have been there when it comes to self-awareness and taking ownership and accountability. At 28 years old, I was a new executive leading over 200 people, and I was convinced, I was really convinced that I was the best leader on the team. Confident, driven, always available. I had an open door policy like many of you, I'm sure. Months went by, nobody walked through it. I'd walk through the halls and get polite nods, but no real conversations, no connection, no real opportunity for me to coach my team and take them to the next level. Just pretty much silence. And then one brave team member came up to me and they said something that stopped me in my tracks. They said, "Well, you're kind of intimidating." And I said, "Yeah, that's not true." And I brushed it off. That was one person, that was one opinion. And then another person said, "Well, you're kind of intimidating." And then another person said, "You're kind of intimidating." So I did something terrifying, something that most leaders refuse to do. I sent an anonymous survey to all 200 people on my team. 75% of them said I was intimidating, not relatable, and I looked mad all the time. I cried that day. I went home and I cried. And I'm not going to pretend that I didn't, because it truly hurt my feelings. I worked hard and I thought I was really showing up as the best leader. So how could that be their experience of me? But here's what that moment taught me and gave me. It gave me clarity. And clarity is the first step to ownership, because you can't fix something that you can't see. And most of us are running around with a ton of blind spots. And that's exactly the problem with leaders who refuse to look in the mirror. So what is the real problem? Here's what's happening in organizations right now. Daniel Goleman, one of the leading researchers on emotional intelligence, says that EQ is on the decline globally. It's not staying flat, it's actually declining. And our own research at Rise Up For You shows that 83% of professionals struggle with self-confidence and feeling like they are truly enough. So let me ask you this. If the person at the top of your team is struggling to lead themselves, how the heck are they going to lead their team? And how does that ripple down? Think about that for a second. It goes everywhere, into every meeting, every conversation, every moment where you react instead of responding. 75% of careers are derailed not because of a lack of skill or strategy. They're actually derailed because of emotional competencies that we haven't learned. The inability to handle interpersonal problems, the inability to lead a team through conflict, the inability to adapt. And this is not a soft skill problem, this is a leadership crisis. Well, actually it's both. And it starts at the top. You want your team to own their results, but we have to own ours first. You want your team to be coachable, but you have to be coachable first. You want the team to walk into hard conversations and to take feedback without flinching, but you as a leader have to be able to do the same thing. Because leadership is not a title, it is a model. And what you model is what your team will become. I'm going to say that again. What you model is what your team will become. So let's talk about the hard truth, which is the blind spots. Let me introduce you to a client I once had. I'm going to call him Jason for the sake of this video. Jason was the top sales performer. I mean, he was a beast in his industry. He was in the mortgage industry. And year after year, he crushed his numbers. On paper, he was every leader's dream and every organization's dream because he was bringing in a lot of finances and the revenue was growing because of him. But behind the scenes, he had a temper that he could not control. And his team really felt the impact of that. So one day after a deal fell through and his team wasn't making the sales like he was, he yelled at the team and he threw a chair across the room. Now you can imagine that probably didn't go well. So actually the human resources said that he needed to get coaching and they hired our company. You know, when I started working with Jason, he walked in completely convinced that his performance justified his behavior. His results were outstanding. So what did the emotions have to do with it and why did it matter? But when a team member's feedback finally broke through, when Jason heard that the people around him felt unsafe, something in that moment helped him recognize that his team is only going to perform up to the level of his behaviors. And what happened next was truly powerful. Through the emotional intelligence coaching and understanding ownership and accountability, Jason was able to go back and own his behaviors. And when he owned his behaviors, something different happened. The one act of ownership rebuilt more trust than years of top performance ever can. And guess what happened? His team started to perform better. Sales started to come in. As a department, they were more cohesive. Why? Because his team didn't need him to be perfect. They needed him to be real. That is emotional intelligence in action. And that is accountability at the highest leadership level. And it started not with managing his team, but with managing himself. So let's break down a simple framework that I can provide for you that you can use now, today, tomorrow, and in the future, and even pass on to your team. So the question is, how do you actually do this? Here's the system that we're going to start with. First, it starts with self-awareness. And self-awareness has a specific skill set to it. So it's not just only reflecting, looking at yourself in the mirror and doing affirmations, but you need to start to be able to label your emotions. Not just I'm frustrated. Frustration is the surface emotion. We want to get underneath it, right? We want to get to the core of frustration, okay? Is it hurt? Is it that you feel dismissed? Is it that you feel unseen? Is it fear? The more specific you can name what you feel, the less power it has over your behavior. And truthfully, the more clarity it provides for yourself and for your team. Now you need to understand your triggers. Every leader has them. In fact, every person has them. A certain tone in a meeting can trigger you. A missed deadline, a team member who pushes back or makes excuses. The question is, do you know what your triggers are as a leader? Or are you reacting and then rationalizing them after the fact? So I want you to ask yourself, what are the things that just piss you off or make you so mad with a team member and why? You need to solicit honest feedback, not from the people who will tell you what you want to hear. That's the worst thing. But from the people in your life who will actually give you what you need to hear. Ask them, what are my blind spots? Okay, that you see in me that I don't see in myself. What do you see in me that I can't see? And here's the rule when you receive it. No defensiveness, no explaining, no pushing back, just listening. You can sit with it later. In the moment, the only job is just to receive it and then politely say, I hear you, thank you. Then comes the self-management piece, because awareness without management is just suffering, right? Self-management means that when you get triggered, and you will, you have the tools to pause before you respond. Not suppress, not ignore, not push down, but just pause. The cycle of triggers goes like this. External event happens, there's an emotional reaction, there's assumed thoughts and beliefs, then we spiral, we behave, we react with that behavior, and then it repeats. Now we want to break that cycle so that it interrupts the before behavioral reaction that can get us in trouble, okay, to behaviors and reactions that are calm, connected, that don't destroy us as a leader. Consistency, transparency, and adaptability. Internal motivation that doesn't depend on external validation. That is what emotional management looks like in practice, and that's what we're aiming for. So here's what I want to leave you with. The word accountability gets thrown around a lot, like it's just this random management tool. But the reality is, you've got to apply it for yourself. Accountability, real accountability, it begins with the person in the mirror. It begins with the people that are at the top. It begins with the courage to send the survey, to sit with the feedback, to cry about it if you have to, like I did, and then to do the work anyways. It begins with building enough self-awareness to know the difference between who you think you are and who your team is actually experiencing. Because when you own that gap, when you stand in front of the people you lead and say, here's what I'm working on, here's where I fell short, here's what I'm doing differently, you don't lose the respect, you actually earn it. And a lot of times you give permission for people to continue to also grow themselves and to lean in on the challenges that they also deal with as an individual. Every single time you push yourself and you grow yourself and you build that self-awareness, you're earning more and more respect. That's the foundation, not the strategy deck, not the KPIs. Those are all things that come as a result of you working hard on yourself, not the performance review system, you doing the work on yourself first. When you take ownership of your emotional intelligence, you stop trying to manage your team and you start inspiring them. And that is the difference, my friends, between a leader people follows because they have to and a leader people follow because they want to. Do the work. I'll see you in the next one. And if you're interested in learning how to help your team become accountable after you work on yourself first, make sure you watch the next video on transformational leadership, how to make sure your team is accountable as well. I'll see you soon. Emotional intelligence is often the difference between good and exceptional performance. When individuals develop emotional intelligence, they communicate more effectively, handle stress with greater ease, and build stronger relationships, both personally and professionally. And for organizations, the payoff is clear: higher retention, healthier team dynamics, and leaders who know how to inspire and influence rather than just instruct. Studies show companies that prioritize EQ, emotional intelligence, consistently outperform those that don't, because people who feel valued, understood, contribute more, stay longer, and lead better. Here at Rise Up For You, we love working with professionals and teams with the emotional intelligence skills that create both personal growth and organizational success. We'd love to connect with you, learn more about your goals, and share how we are helping companies around the world enhance their culture, their engagement, and their performance through learning the emotional intelligence skills. If this sounds like something of interest to you, book your call with our team, completely complimentary. Bring your goals and let's share with you how we can make the greatest difference possible together as partners.